At 8 a.m. on September 8th, the USS Jason Dunham was carrying out another routine counter-narcotics patrol in the Caribbean when its SPY-6 radar picked up something that almost pushed the region into a serious crisis. Venezuelan forces were rapidly moving 25,000 troops along the Caribbean coastline and the Colombian border, sending a clear signal aimed at challenging the presence of the U.S. Navy. What Maduro's commanders did not realize after receiving orders from Caracas to show strength and pressure the Americans was that they were about to be reminded why testing U.S. naval power so close to home is a dangerous gamble. This was far from an ordinary patrol. The Dunham Strike Group was protecting international waters through which more than $500 billion in trade flows every year, supporting economies around the world and helping secure the strategic gateway of the Panama Canal. Their mission, part of Operation Pacific Viper, reflected a straightforward goal: keep the sea lanes open, disrupt cartel activity, and maintain a visible American presence. Venezuela answered with a display of aging Russian hardware. Su-30 fighter jets tore through the sky at 1,320 miles per hour. T-72 tanks advanced at 37 miles per hour. Diesel submarines pushed through waters nearly 1,000 feet deep, all under the assumption that they could pressure a naval force that has dominated the region for generations. Inside the Dunham's Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer watched a display lit up with red threat markers. Venezuela's exclusion zone flashed across the Caribbean map like a warning. The SPY-6 radar, precise enough to detect even the smallest movement at extreme range, tracked Maduro's forces with remarkable clarity. There were 123,000 troops, supported by a 4.5 million strong militia, and protected by S-300 air defenses with a reach of 250 miles. On paper, it looked formidable. But against the Dunham's 96 vertical launch cells, loaded with SM-6 missiles, capable of striking targets 230 miles away at Mach 3.5, the comparison was severely one-sided. Confident in their own messaging, Maduro's commanders believed their imported arsenal made them hard to challenge. Their aircraft surged overhead, their submarines slipped below the surface, and their troops pressed forward, all expecting to intimidate a $1.8 billion warship built for exactly this kind of moment. But the Dunham's crew stayed calm, passing threat data across the strike group through cooperative engagement capability, connecting every ship into a single, seamless combat network. Nearby, the USS Iwo Jima, an 844-foot assault ship carrying 1,700 Marines and V-22 Ospreys, stood ready for anything. Alongside it, the destroyers Gravely and Sampson held position, forming a wall of steel against any Venezuelan show of force. The Caribbean was alive with merchant traffic, oil tankers, and cargo ships, all moving under the protection of the U.S. Navy. If Maduro managed to turn those waters into his personal stage, the impact on global trade would be immediate. But defeating the U.S. Navy in its own sphere is the kind of ambition history has never rewarded. As Venezuela's Su-30S rushed into the air and its submarines rumbled beneath the surface like heavy machinery, everything pointed toward a confrontation. Caracas believed it was putting on a coordinated display across sea, air, and land. The problem was that they had chosen the one Navy that turns intimidation into a lesson in control. From sunrise to nightfall, Maduro's forces showcased aging Russian-built equipment in an attempt to project strength. The U.S. Navy answered with discipline and calm. Where others saw rising tension, American crews treated it as another mission to manage with precision. Leading the way was the USS Jason Dunham, a 510-foot destroyer moving through Caribbean waters at 35 miles per hour. Roughly 150 nautical miles off Venezuela's coast, it was tracking drug-running routes as Operation Pacific Viper unfolded at full pace. The mission, carried out alongside the Coast Guard, focused on stopping cocaine shipments before they could reach American streets. And as darkness spread across the sea, another layer of the operation took hold, masking movement across the water and forcing the Navy to once again deal with threats others had allowed to grow. At 9:15 p.m. in the Caribbean Sea, just off the Colombia-Venezuela border, near the well-known smuggling corridor of La Guajira, the night itself seemed to frame the moment. Moonlight broke across the dark water like shattered glass as the USS Cole, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, cut through the sea about 50 miles from shore. Its AN/SPY-1D radar swept the horizon in full Krugovoy coverage, watching for aircraft and distant vessels, while its electro-optical and infrared systems focused on smaller contacts closer to the ship with remarkable precision. Not far away, an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter moved low over the waves, barely 30 meters above the surface. Its rotors hammered through the night air, while its FLIR sensors searched through the darkness with sharp, unblinking clarity, staying low enough to avoid unnecessary interference from land-based observers. Higher above, two F-35 stealth fighters patrolled from a U.S. airbase in the Caribbean, supported by an aerial refueling tanker. Their engines remained almost ghostly at altitude as their stealth design kept them nearly invisible in the digital battlespace. Using AN/APG-81A ESA radars, they scanned the area and shared data through Link 16 with the P-8 Poseidon and the USS Cole. Then, without warning, a suspicious contact appeared out of the black water, only 18 miles from the airborne patrol. It was a 65-foot fishing vessel, weathered and rusted, drifting 12 miles off La Guajira as though it were barely staying afloat. Its 200-horsepower Yanmar engine coughed and faltered, creating the impression of mechanical trouble. A Venezuelan flag hung from the mast, and stacks of wooden fish crates helped sell the illusion. But beneath the foul-smelling catch was a hidden cargo of cocaine, packed in large quantities. Another steel container held assault rifles, grenades, and several RPG-7 launchers, their metal surfaces catching the moonlight with an unmistakable menace. Trailing about 150 feet behind the main vessel was a 20-foot rescue skiff, small but no less dangerous. Painted with fake Venezuelan rescue markings, it played the role of a harmless support craft while hiding more launchers and blades beneath a blue tarp. Together, the two vessels slipped through the dark waters of La Guajira, a route long known for smuggling, where weak oversight and internal instability had created the perfect gap for traffickers to exploit. Aboard a P-8 Poseidon circling near Trinidad like a silent guardian, nearly 250 miles from La Guajira, U.S. pilots picked up something that did not fit the pattern. A strange heat signature appeared on their screens, the kind of detail trained crews never ignore. Infrared sensors locked on to the Yanmar engine of that fishing boat, still moving at a slow 5 knots. At first glance, it looked like a vessel in trouble, but the temperature profile told a different story. It was too steady, too controlled, too convenient. This was not an accident drifting at sea. It was a performance, carefully staged. Red markers began flashing across the radar picture as the fishing vessel and its trailing skiff moved through the waves in an erratic pattern, trying to look unpredictable and harmless at the same time. Then the F-35s came in low, just 60 meters above the target, using high-resolution electro-optical and infrared systems to sharpen the picture. What they found removed any doubt. Large crates were visible on deck, along with clear signs of hidden weapons. From the USS Cole, the situation came into full focus. Its AN/SPY-1D radar and sensor suite built a clean, detailed track of the two vessels. The rescue skiff was carrying armed men and visible launchers, while movement on both boats suggested the crews were preparing for contact. Even so, the officers aboard the Cole chose restraint first. Instead of forcing an immediate boarding, they ordered a patrol boat to approach from a safe distance, hail the vessel, and attempt a controlled warning. A small U.S. patrol boat pushed out from the destroyer, closing to within 1.2 miles of the suspected smuggling craft. On board were 4 Marines, focused and ready, approaching under the appearance of offering assistance while actually evaluating the threat up close. Above them, an MH-60R Seahawk lifted from the deck and moved into position 3 miles from the target. Its sensors confirmed 7 individuals on board, along with bladed weapons and rifle barrels, reflecting under the moonlight. Then the situation changed instantly. The smugglers opened fire without hesitation. Rifle rounds tore across the air, turning the encounter from a tense interception into an active combat emergency. One Marine was hit in the shoulder. Another was wounded in the leg during the chaos as the attackers pressed their advantage. Smoke devices burst around the patrol boat, throwing out thick white clouds that swallowed visibility and interfered with optical systems, giving the smugglers cover in the confusion. At that point, restraint gave way to action. The senior commander made the call to pull the patrol team back and shift to standoff engagement. No more close approach, no more risks inside the smoke. The MH-60R climbed to 1,000 feet and fixed the target with a laser designator. An AGM-114 Hellfire missile was brought into play, a precision weapon designed for exactly this kind of fast-moving threat. Guided through the haze by laser targeting, it stayed locked despite the smoke and the smugglers' crude attempts to shield themselves. Realizing the situation had turned against them, the smugglers panicked. They abandoned the fishing boat and rushed onto the rescue skiff, trying to escape at speed and leaving their cargo behind. U.S. forces held for a moment, allowing the skiff to create distance and avoiding a scenario that could trigger a larger political crisis. Once it had moved roughly 1,500 feet away, the target was clear. The Seahawk fired. From 1.2 miles out, the Hellfire cut through the night like a line of light and struck the fishing vessel with precision. A bright blast tore through the structure of the boat, followed by flames and a column of black smoke rolling into the sky. The vessel was transformed into a wreck within seconds, its hidden cargo scattered into the sea among shattered wood and twisted metal. What had begun as a suspicious blip in the darkness ended in a clear message. In those waters, deception only works until the right eyes are watching. Oil shimmered beneath the moonlight like a toxic rainbow, while the rescue skiff, now little more than a fading shadow, disappeared into the dark, rising and falling with the rough sea. Its fate remained unknown, swallowed by the vastness of the ocean. Then the water grew quiet again. The gunfire was gone as if it had never happened at all. The wounded Marines were treated immediately, and fortunately, their injuries were not life-threatening. Once again, the U.S. Navy had stepped in, handled the danger, and restored order. But in Venezuela, the reaction was anything but calm. The destruction of the vessel sent shockwaves through their command, and anger spread fast. Not long after the blast, Venezuelan forces detected the explosion and moved quickly. A Su-30 MKV surged into the sky, its engines tearing through the night, while an Mi-17 helicopter followed, sweeping the area with an intense searchlight that lit up the sea like daylight. The beam revealed floating wreckage, scattered debris, a spreading slick of oil, and traces of the vessel's hidden cargo drifting across the waves. Among it all, a torn Venezuelan flag moved with the current, a grim reminder of how badly the night had spiraled. Then the situation became even more dangerous. The Su-30 pilot, consumed by anger, locked onto the USS Cole. On board the American destroyer, officers remained composed. They sent a clear warning over military channels, urging restraint and telling the aircraft to disengage. But reason had already taken a back seat. The Venezuelan pilot kept his lock, saw the target clearly on his radar, and made a reckless choice. Moments later, an anti-ship missile tore into the night, racing toward the American warship. The response was immediate. The USS Cole activated its full defensive network in seconds. Electronic countermeasures came alive, close-in defenses prepared to fire, and above it all, the P-8 Poseidon tracked the incoming missile in real time, feeding targeting data through the battle network. An SM-2 interceptor launched upward and struck the threat in a bright explosion, wiping it from the sky before it could get anywhere close. In that instant, every illusion collapsed. One isolated jet, no matter how aggressive, had no chance against the Navy's layered radar, electronic warfare, and missile defense system. The sky was firmly under American control. A second warning was sent. The U.S. made its position clear. The destroyed vessel had been a smuggling boat disguised under a Venezuelan flag and carrying a massive illegal shipment. At nearly the same time, Venezuelan commanders received confirmation that the fleeing rescue skiff had been recovered inside their own waters, leaving little room for denial. That was the moment the tone changed. The FANB commander, now facing the full weight of the situation, ordered his forces to pull back. The Su-30 turned away, its engine noise fading into the distance, and the Mi-17 disappeared into the darkness soon after. The USS Cole continued its patrol, while Seahawks flew low across the water one last time to confirm the area was secure. No apology came. None was expected. Back in Caracas, anger remained, but humiliation and caution had started to take over. The fact that no lives had been lost kept the crisis from becoming something even larger, yet the bitterness did not disappear. For the moment, reckless emotion gave way to calculation. Now the real question was no longer what had happened, but what would come next. Would this confrontation spark something bigger, or would it force both sides into an uneasy pause across waters already filled with tension? The U.S. Navy returned to base untouched, its dominance never seriously challenged. Even so, one thought lingered over the Caribbean like a gathering storm. Was this the end of the incident, or only the beginning of something far more dangerous?